Hello, my name is Syndia and today we're talking oil pastels. Before going any further, please be sure to look at the other videos. We covered different topics on oil pastels. Everything's on the description box below. And today we'll be focusing on techniques and tips to help you draw. As a very quick note, for those who haven't had the chance to see the review, you can use a student grade oil pastel to start. A very modest 12-piece color is fine to experiment with. Any old paper you can find or a sketchbook. And I've outlined a quick landscape here, nothing fancy. Basically today the point is not to make a very nice drawing, but mainly to see how the material reacts to different techniques and just give you some tips to start off with and make your life a little bit easier. You'll need some kind of scraper tool. It could be anything. It could be a bobby pin, a needle, a toothpick, anything pointy to scratch. We're gonna be blending with our finger. If you're not scared of getting dirty, you shouldn't be scared because it's part of the fun. You could also, if you're a little more used to the different artistic material, you can get a stomper like this or a Q-tip. Any of those things will work perfectly fine for what we're going to be doing today. The first tip I have for you is to not be afraid to mess up or to make mistakes and not to take this too seriously. It's important when you start with a new material to just experiment and start with something very simple. It could just be doodles or anything that you want. It doesn't even have to be representative. You could do an abstract kind of thing just to play around with the colors, the texture, nothing fancy. We're going for the low-hanging fruit here. Another tip would be to not be afraid to mix colors together or for the colors to overlay or to touch. I find that when I was beginning, at least, I tended to block off colors and keep them separated. Maybe that's what we used to do as children. If we see a blue sky, we just put that one blue as a big block. But the idea here is more to try to mix different colors. You could even put some yellow in the sky and whites and different types of purples and blue and so on. So don't be afraid to layer colors on top of the other to mix a whole bunch of things together. That way you'll have a richer and more realistic drawing and just overall more interesting in my opinion. Let's start with how to apply the pigment. Maybe we could go with the sky. We were talking about the sky before, so let's start to put some blue down. You could just draw and apply the pigment as you might naturally want to do, like so. You could also use the stick on its side, which will give a lot more subtle effects and different pressure points, and will also cover more of the paper at once, as opposed to just putting down lines. So you can experiment with that. A tip also would be to try not to saturate the paper with the one color that you apply at first. For example, let me do what I'm saying not to do right now. So here I'm really saturating the paper so that I apply a lot of material and we don't see any of the paper peeking through. This is something that you can absolutely do if it's the effect you want to give. You just have to know that it's going to be slightly harder to layer some pigment on top of it and for that pigment to come out. Let me show you what it gives. We'll put some white on top of this. You see that the white will not come, it will not peek through as a white, but will mostly lighten that blue. And then the excess material tends to want to peel away or scrape off, like so. You can still do this, but by comparison, if we put the white here where there's less pigment, you see that here, because there's less pigment, it gives you more freedom to control the different tones of the blue. You get more whites and a wider array of shades of blue. And that applies for different colors. You may want to put some yellow in your sky. So if you add yellow here, which will turn green with the blue, it will show a lot more than if you try applying the yellow in the blue. So both methods are absolutely fine, depending on what you want to achieve. If you go for less pigment to begin with, you'll have more options later on, and you can always go back and add more of that pigment. Let's talk about the layering. There's a few different techniques. Taking two colors and putting them one on top of the other, like this, and really mixing it together as you apply the second coat. This layers the colors and it kind of blends them together. You can also layer colors without really blending them, meaning that you would sparsely put the one color down and kind of do the same thing with a different color without swirling the material around. Another way to blend two colors together is cross hatching. So you put a bunch of lines together like this, and then you come back with a different color in the other direction, and you can use this either to blend the material in this way or to create a gradient. And we can also use a stippling motion, which is basically to put a bunch of little dots like this to simulate the leaves here of the tree. And of course, you could use different tones of greens and different colors for more realism. And you go on like this, just using dot motions. You build up the leaves in the tree this way. Let's try blending. Blending is a big part of doing oil pastels. Let's start with the Q-tip, because this is what you likely would have at home. I'm going to try and blend this cross-hatching here with the Q-tip. Once you've blended, you can go on and add more pigment as you want and start build the texture of whatever you're drawing. Another way to blend is with your finger. More messy, but still works. You can rotate and just go back and forth. You could make the pigment go out this way, creating subtle little lines. The more pigment you have, obviously, the more lines you could create, like so. If you want that grass effect or other effect, this could work with water or any other things. You could use the stomper to blend as well. What's great also I find about oil pastel is that because an oily material, you can almost feel like it's 3D, and like you can move the material in the way you want it to go and create those lines. Here the sky, we had the white that we put on top of that blue. We could make it more uniform by blending. As you can see, depending on the quality of the pastels you're using, it might be more or less blendable, especially when you layer a lot of material. So here we had a thick layer of white and blue on top of the other, and you can see that the material tends to want to be patchy and scrape off. If you had a very high quality professional pastel, it wouldn't be patchy this way. It would really meld into one into the other and create a nice creamy finish. But you can still work around it, like I said, by building up the product slower. So here where I put less pastel, it gets more easy to blend and it's more uniform. There's none of those streaks. You can still create that light blue by just rubbing over. That's another way to blend, obviously, color on color, the way I was showing before, instead of using the stomper. If you want a lighter color or you want to blend two colors together, you can use a thinner layer of one color and a thinner layer of the other color and blend it more like I did here in the grass section. And lastly, another way to blend is by using solvents, paint solvents, turpentines or other solvents. You could use that with a stiff brush or any other tool you want. It will dilute the oil pastel and it will make it thinner and very spreadable. I don't have any here because I'm paranoid and I don't like harsh chemicals. I don't have any in my studio and I don't want to work with them, but that's really a personal choice. It does work though because I have tried it before. Another thing you can do is scrape away with that handy tool. So you can use your pointy tool to kind of carve away at it and then create patterns. One thing to know, like I was mentioning before, the pastels will get dirty because you're mixing all colors together, so don't forget to have a rag or any paper on the side to kind of clean it up if you don't want certain colors to lay one on top of the other. Don't be afraid to highlight with lighter colors on top of darker colors. You have to know that the student grade pastels are less creamy than the professional ones, as I was mentioning before. So the white especially will apply less opaque and less white or highlighting than the professional grade. My tip would be to get yourself a stick of professional white and maybe a black as well, because you can do the nice dark shades which will make your drawing pop as well as the big highlight. So I would get one stick of each. It's about $3 per stick and I think it's worth it. But if you don't want to invest in it, you can still work well with this. You can plan your highlights by not using any pigment and keeping the white of the paper. That's one way. And you could still use this gently without applying too much pressure to not blend it with the other material, but more to put it on top. So let's try to do it here without applying too much pressure. See, I'm going very gently in small strokes, and you could, if with patience, you could build your highlight. And here I've blended multiple colors to give a different tone of blue. I've blended some green and some black and some dark blue, and I'm blending this with the tool, but because these are far away trees in the background, I'm kind of using the excess pastel that I have on my tool to create the fuzzy treetops here. This is just a base color for this landscape, and I would obviously go back afterwards to build up more details, mostly using the black. I would kind of go in and add some shadows and then blend. Keep going, add more shadows, maybe a bit of light, and keep blending and keep adding. When you want to render something more realistically, the key is really patience. Patience and just enjoying what you do, losing yourself in those details, and take it more like some kind of meditation moment where you don't think of anything and you just focus in this moment in doing this little detail, and you just take your time and you try not focusing on how it looks and how it will look and will it be nice at the end. You just want to just do one little section at a time and kind of enjoy that section as you're doing it. It takes away the pressure and it makes the experience more fun, and before you know it, you get something surprisingly interesting that you may not have thought you could get. I could show you the very first drawing I made maybe with this when I first started using oil pastels. When I got my set years ago, my first set, I was very excited to try them. I wanted to see how the material reacted, what I could do with it. I didn't know exactly what to draw, but I decided to do a study of a painting by my favorite painter, Henri Matisse. So the painting is called Les Fleurs dans le Vase. Here's Matisse's original painting. Here is my rendition. I wasn't going for an exact copy, or I wasn't going for precision, as you can imagine. I was mostly trying to get a feel for the material, see how much detail I could put in, how to blend things, different ways to blend, and I did this very quickly and I very much enjoyed myself, and this is how I fell in love with the oil pastels. Quick recap, you need just some affordable pastels you'll find at the craft store. Don't go to the dollar store, just go to the art supply store. You'll find something very inexpensive but good quality enough for you to enjoy yourself. Any old piece of paper, experiment at your heart's desire. You don't necessarily need to do anything figurative at first. Blend, blend, blend. Use and try to scrape with the different scraping tools. Don't forget to slowly build up the material as opposed to saturating it right away. Don't be afraid to mix a bunch of different colors all together to give more depth to your drawing. So those are the best tips for the absolute beginner. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you try it. I hope you have fun. Stay inspired. Come and find me on Instagram if you're an Instagrammer. I would love to connect with you there. I'll see you in the next video. There will be more. À bientôt.